Hey everyone, welcome to this deep dive. We're really excited about this one today. We're looking at excerpts from a memoir called Three Times a Victim.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of dig into the author's story, how they were repeatedly victimized and how that all connects to the larger issues of injustice and toxic shame. It's going to be quite a journey, so buckle up.
I'm ready. I mean, the title itself, Three Times a Victim, is so powerful. It already suggests this deep layered experience of harm.
Right, and from the very beginning, you just feel the weight of the author's childhood.
Yeah.
Like emotional neglect and abuse, this lack of affection.
Yeah.
It's helpable.
And the way the author describes their parents' behavior, like that line about love being duty, gratitude being expected, and respect being mandatory, not earned.
Yeah, it's chilling, right?
Yeah.
Like it sets the scene immediately.
It does. It really paints a picture of this emotionally barren environment.
And what gets me is they talk about going to Disney World, having an in-ground pool, like material things, but zero happy memories with their parents.
It's almost like those things make the absence of genuine connection even more stark.
Yeah, like it's not just a void. It's a void with all this stuff around it, making it even more obvious.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how trauma can manifest in so many ways, right? It's not always the big dramatic event.
Sometimes it's the absence of something.
Yeah, like love, safety, acceptance. Those things can leave the deepest scars.
Absolutely. But, thankfully, the author had their maternal grandparents.
Oh, yeah, they seem like a bright spot.
They were. And there's this one scene I remember where the grandmother in this like frail little voice tells the parents, don't hurt him.
Wow, what a powerful image.
Right. Small but fierce, like she was protecting him in whatever way she could.
It's amazing how those small acts of protection can mean so much, especially for a child facing abuse.
Definitely. It's like a seed of hope.
Yeah.
A reminder that someone sees them and cares.
And it's in this environment that the author makes a vow to never be like their parents.
Yeah, that's a huge moment, right? Like
Yeah.
never lose their temper, never make anyone feel unsafe because of them.
It's like a declaration of resilience, choosing a different path for themselves.
Totally. And you see this thread throughout the memoir, how that vow shapes their choices and reactions.
It speaks to the power we have to choose growth, even when surrounded by negativity.
And, later on, the author describes overcoming their shyness and social anxiety, finding refuge in friendships.
It's interesting how relationships play such a vital role in their journey.
They do. And they start therapy during college, and you can sense this real shift toward personal growth happening.
It's like they're starting to understand themselves and their needs better.
For sure. And then we meet Celta, pronounced with a hard C, like Celtic.
Okay, got it.
And this relationship is really pivotal for the author because it marks a turning point in their understanding of love.
In what way?
Well, for the first time, they experience saying and hearing I love you in a way that feels genuine and transformative.
It's like they're finally experiencing a healthy, loving relationship.
Exactly. And Celta's influence goes beyond just romantic love. She encourages the author's personal growth, their confidence, their willingness to express themselves.
It sounds like a really beautiful period of growth and blossoming for them.
It was, but then the story takes a dark turn. We meet this guy, John F., a manipulative figure who falsely accuses the author, and it leads to just utter devastation.
Oh no, this is where things get really complicated.
And what makes it even more tragic is that the author has just lost Len, the love of their life, so they're already grieving and vulnerable.
And John F. preys on that vulnerability, right? Using these false accusations as a weapon to isolate and discredit the author.
It's heartbreaking, and it makes you wonder how often this kind of manipulation happens, especially when someone is already hurting.
That's a really good question and a scary one to think about.
It is. The impact on the author is devastating. They lose their career, their license, and end up homeless. It's brutal.
It really shows how quickly things can unravel when you're up against injustice and manipulation and how vulnerable we all are to that.
Yeah, and it raises some serious questions about how we protect vulnerable people from exploitation and false accusations.
Right. How do we make sure the truth prevails, especially when power dynamics are involved?
Those are tough questions, and they become even more pressing as the story unfolds.
And it just highlights how easily the legal system can be manipulated.
Wow.
It's scary. And, just when you think things can't get any worse, the author is attacked brutally this time by Anna, the wife of their landlord.
Oh gosh, that's awful.
Yeah, this is where the title, Three Times a Victim, really hits home.
This part was just shocking. Like, you can't believe that despite having evidence of the attack, The police immediately believe Anna's lies.
And they turn the victim into the accused.
Right. It's like a complete flip of the script. It's a prime example of how ingrained biases can lead to this total failure of justice.
Yeah, especially biases around gender and domestic violence. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes even the people who are supposed to protect us can end up perpetuating the harm.
It's heartbreaking, and the author describes the experience of jail as dehumanizing, like no support from their family, the crushing weight of toxic shame. It's all just so heavy.
And you see how past trauma can resurface and intensify during times of crisis, right? Like the author's earlier experiences with neglect and abuse, it fuels these feelings of worthlessness and self-doubt.
It's like a vicious cycle. It just keeps feeding itself.
Exactly. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, the author meets Kathy, a woman with dissociative identity disorder.
And for those who might not know, dissody is a complex mental health condition where a person has two or more distinct identities or personality states.
Right, and this relationship unfortunately turns toxic and leads to even more false accusations against the author.
It's like a pattern repeating itself, and it makes you think about how challenging it can be for someone who's already experienced so much trauma to set healthy boundaries, especially when mental health is involved.
For sure. And the author's vulnerability, their need for connection, it gets exploited again. And they end up facing a lengthy prison sentence and under immense pressure to accept a plea deal, even though they're innocent.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, their lawyer doesn't even fight for them.
It's such a pivotal moment because it speaks to this larger issue within the justice system, the immense pressure that can lead innocent people to accept plea deals.
It's like efficiency trumps justice.
Exactly. And it leaves the victims feeling silenced and re-traumatized.
And the consequences are lasting, right? Like the plea deal labels the author as a sex offender, and that creates huge barriers to employment. It just perpetuates that cycle of shame and isolation.
It makes you think about the long-term impact of these labels, even when they're based on false accusations. It's a systemic issue that we need to address as a society.
Absolutely. But despite all these setbacks, the author somehow finds the strength to start rebuilding their life. They try to find work, navigate homelessness, and discover this unexpected support through new connections.
It's inspiring, right? Like their resilience really shines through.
It does, and they connect with this organization called CEF, Community Empowerment Fund.
CES is great. They focus on empowerment, not charity. Like they give people the tools and resources to rebuild their lives on their own terms.
Exactly. And therapy plays a big role too, especially EMDR.
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's a psychotherapy treatment that was originally designed to help people deal with the distress associated with traumatic memories.
And the author describes reliving those traumatic memories, feeling the raw emotions, and ultimately finding a path toward healing.
It's powerful to see the author, who was once a therapist themselves, now experiencing the therapeutic process from the other side. It adds this unique layer to their understanding of trauma and healing.
For sure. And then there's this incredibly raw and honest part where the author describes a suicide attempt and the depths of despair they felt. But simple act of human connection pulls them back from the brink.
It really highlights the power of reaching out for help even when it feels impossible.
Yeah.
And also the importance of recognizing the signs of someone who's struggling and offering support. You never know how much of an impact even a small act of kindness can have.
It's a turning point in the story, that moment of vulnerability, of connecting with another human being. It helps the author start to shed that toxic shame.
It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, human connection can be a lifeline. That sense of belonging, that feeling of being seen and understood, it can give us the strength to keep going.
And that's where the hospital stay becomes crucial. The author, surrounded by others who understand mental health struggles, begins to see themselves in a new light.
It challenges societal perceptions of mental illness, as you say. It's not about weakness. It's about acknowledging the complexities of the human experience.
Totally. And it's in this new environment that the author realizes they deserve better. They begin to challenge those negative self-perceptions and recognize their own strength and resilience.
This is so powerful. It marks a shift from self-blame to self-compassion, a crucial step in healing.
And the author talks about returning to work in the mental health field as a certified peer support specialist, using their own experiences to help others.
That's a fantastic example of turning pain into purpose. The role of a certified peer support specialist is all about shared experience. It allows people who've been through similar challenges to offer support and guidance and hope to others who are struggling.
And it's in this new role that the author encounters the evolving understanding of gender identity, meeting individuals who use they, them, their pronouns, and embracing the fluidity of gender expression. It's a moment of personal growth and also reflects the broader societal shifts in understanding gender.
It highlights how our understanding of identity is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
It encourages us to question assumptions and embrace diversity and create a more inclusive society where people can express themselves authentically.
But then, despite all this progress, the author keeps running into barriers to employment. Because of that past conviction, they share this frustrating experience of being repeatedly judged based on a lie, this label that overshadows their skills, their experience, their genuine desire to help others.
This is where the systemic issues become really clear, even with efforts to expunge records and address past injustices. The stigma of a conviction, especially one related to a violent crime, can be incredibly difficult to overcome.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The author details how the very system that failed to protect them in the first place is now being used to further marginalize and exclude them. It's a heartbreaking illustration of the cyclical nature of injustice.
It raises a huge question. How do we balance the need for accountability with the need for rehabilitation and reintegration? How do we create a system that allows people to move beyond their past mistakes without being perpetually defined by them?
The author also talks about struggling with shyness. Despite having achieved so much and having helped so many others, it's a reminder that trauma can have lasting effects, even when we've made significant progress in our healing journey.
It underscores the complexity of human experience, right? We can be both strong and vulnerable, resilient and wounded, and it's often in acknowledging our vulnerabilities that we find true strength and connection.
And there's this really insightful observation about how societal perceptions of masculinity and femininity impacted the author's own understanding of their gender identity. They talk about feeling more aligned with feminine traits and perspectives, challenging those traditional gender norms.
That's so important. It highlights the need to question those norms and create a more inclusive understanding of gender identity, allowing people to express themselves authentically free from the constraints of rigid societal expectations.
The author then recounts this uncomfortable encounter with someone they met through a discussion group on racism. It highlights the challenges of navigating social interactions, especially when dealing with past trauma and that fear of being misjudged or misunderstood.
It's a good reminder about clear communication and setting healthy boundaries in relationships, and the need for education and awareness around consent and respect, particularly given the author's experiences with sexual assault.
And the author draws parallels between their own story and the very public case of Brett Kavanaugh, noting the stark contrast in their responses to accusations.
Ray pointing out how Brett Kavanaugh's anger and entitlement stood in stark contrast to their own experience of being silenced and shamed by the system.
Exactly. It raises questions about how we as a society determine credibility, evaluate evidence, and ensure a fair and just process for everyone involved. And then despite all the challenges, the author keeps pushing forward, seeking new opportunities to help others, demonstrating this remarkable resilience. They describes securing a job with a company that seemed promising only to be let go because of that old conviction, even after initially being assured it wouldn't be an issue.
It's so frustrating because it highlights the persistent barriers faced by people with criminal records, even when those records are based on flawed or unjust systems. It really underscores the need for broader societal change, including policies that promote rehabilitation and reintegration rather than perpetual punishment.
And the author goes back to CEF for support, sharing their story with advocates who offer not just practical advice, but also genuine empathy and belief.
It's a good example of community-based support,
Right.
Offering a space where people can find resources and encouragement and a sense of belonging. It's a testament to the power of collective action in addressing these systemic issues and creating a more just and equitable society.
And it's through CEF that the author learns about the possibility of having their record expunged, offering this glimmer of hope for a future where they won't be perpetually defined by a past they didn't choose.
This legal avenue, while often complex and challenging, represents a crucial step towards restorative justice. It acknowledges the need to address past injustices and create pathways for people to move forward without being burdened by the stigma of a conviction.
The author concludes this section of the memoir by reflecting on the ongoing impact of that false accusation, the persistent shyness they experience, and the challenges of finding their place in a world that seems so quick to judge and slow to forgive.
It's a poignant reminder that the effects of trauma can be long-lasting, even when people have shown incredible resilience and strength in rebuilding their lives. But there's also a sense of hope, a determination to keep pushing forward, to keep seeking connection, and to challenge the systems that perpetuate injustice.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the strength it takes to just keep going when you've been through so much adversity. Right, it's like a testament to the human spirit, that ability to find hope even when things are incredibly dark.
Totally. And I think what's so powerful about this memoir is that it's not just a personal story. It speaks to these huge societal issues
The way systemic biases impact our justice system, for sure.
and the long-lasting effects of trauma, the
Yeah.
need for more compassion and understanding. We could talk about this for hours.
We really could. That makes you wonder, like, how do we create a society that actually supports and protects vulnerable people? Because so much of what the author went through was about being let down by the systems that should have been there for them.
Right, and that's why I think the author's call to action at the end is so important. Like, they're not just sharing their story to, get sympathy or anything.
They want us to see these issues and do something about it.
Exactly. It's about challenging our own biases and advocating for change, starting with just being aware.
So for everyone listening, what are you taking away from all this? What really stuck with you?
Honestly, for me, it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world. It starts with awareness, with empathy, and a commitment to action, like actually doing something.
And that can be a lot of different things, right?
It can be listening to the stories of those who've been marginalized and silenced, challenging the systems that perpetuate injustice, using your voice and your platform to speak up for change.
I think that's a really powerful message. And it's clear from the author's journey that healing is possible, even after profound trauma. But it takes work and it takes support.
It does, and it also takes a willingness to reach out for help when you need it.
Whether that's through therapy support groups or just connecting with loved ones, you don't have to go through tough times alone.
Absolutely not. We're all in this together in a way.
We really are. Well, we encourage everyone listening to check out the full memoir for a deeper dive into the author's journey. It's a raw and honest account of resilience, vulnerability, and the incredible power of the human spirit to find healing and hope even in the darkest of times.
It's a story that will stay with you and hopefully spark those important conversations and actions that contribute to a more just and compassionate world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.